Welcome to this edition of Engineering Success Profile Editions. Today we're here with Ying Wan Loh, who's going to talk about her role as an aerospace manufacturing engineer. Ying is a chartered engineer and she also won the very prestigious IET Young Woman Engineer of the Year Award in 2019. Hi Ying, and welcome to the show.
Hello Jamie, thanks for having me here.
Great to have you. Can we start with what made you choose a career in engineering?
Sure. I think there are two reasons, and the first one is a bit of an unconventional one. It was actually to make magic a reality. So
Okay.
I was born in I was a Harry Potter generation,
Right.
and I was very fascinated by that. And in school, I was always, I was very much about arts. I was in theatre, I was in the school band. I love arts and all that,
Yeah.
as well as languages and my science subjects.
Yeah.
And at the time, like I wanted to do something fancy on stage, things popping out, a bit like Transformer, but in real life.
Right. Yeah.
And I realized that, well, to make that happen, I need engineering. I need to know the mechanisms. I need to know, design motors and moving mechanisms on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, well, engineering is actually a good one. So off I went to study engineering. and the second more tangible reason is it is a very transferable skill as an engineer. And you can, with one degree, you can go on to do, so you can go into a wide range of different industries.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's the tool sets that you learn as an engineer. So I thought, well, that's a really good one. I want to do something that will benefit the society as a whole.
Yes.
And I think engineering is one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah. So what was your route then into engineering?
I started with my undergraduate at the University of Glasgow. And after that, I went on to do a master's at Cambridge.
Okay.
And after my master's, I joined Rolls Royce as a graduate manufacturing engineer.
Right. Okay. So what skills do you think are needed to become an aerospace manufacturing engineer?
A bit of a background here. So I think in aerospace, there are lots of parts with very tight tolerances.
Right.
So often in microns, it's micron level measurements that we do in aerospace.
Yeah.
And to create these features, they undergo different manufacturing processes. So they'll be machined, and then they'll be lasered, and they'll be heat treated and things like that.
Yeah.
So throughout the process, we generate data from the process, and we use those data to improve, to make it more accurate, to make the manufacturing process more precise.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of things in aerospace is really pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So if we can make something 3 microns more accurate, then it actually affects the performance opportunity of the whole engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the background. And then now back to your question, what are important skills? So important skills in this context are communications and learning agility.
Right.
Communications is because, nobody ever knows everything about a whole engine or a plane or a rocket. You always have to work across different functions. Like I have to talk to design engineers, stress engineers, materials, even sometimes commercial or the supply chain. So you have to be able to, talk across different functions and work on problems together. So communication skills is very important. And secondly, learning agility is because you never stop learning new things. I feel that I'm constantly learning about new things, and it is like, don't be afraid to face some uncertainty in the work. Be able to pick it up and ask the right questions, and you have your knowledge.
Yeah. So what then does your job actually entail? What do you actually do there at Rolls Royce?
To go a bit more technical, it's about Lean Six Sigma, which is a framework and some tools for manufacturing engineers. Right. So I use statistical analysis to streamline production processes.
Okay.
And these are tools like process control, Ishikawa diagram, design of experiments, and like fancy tool sets like this. And we break down complex problems to get to the root cause. Right. So, and I use a software called Minitab to help me with that. Okay. Calculations and all the statistics. So to give an example, if there was one part in a factory that it's a real project. So if there's a part in a factory and one of the features is causing defects in the production, and good reworks and worst case scrap and very expensive parts. So as an engineer, I look into the issue and understand the root causes did some analysis and tried to improve the process to completely eliminate the defects. And usually a project like this would take from anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. Right. And when successful, I'll be able to achieve quite significant cost savings for that.
Yes, yeah. So what's the most challenging part of your job?
The problems that I have to solve for work don't have an answer. So, it's like going to an exam and you don't have an answer. You can't really have a peek at the answer and work out the maths.
Yes.
So sometimes the challenge is technical and sometimes it's people. Right. So if it's technical, it's genuinely like, okay, there are so many potential causes for this defect. Where do I start? How do I prioritize? And usually, if I'm in a situation like that, I'll get advice from different functions and try to solve it as a team. It's very much part of as an engineer, you do collaborate across different functions. It's the core of engineering. If it's a people problem, I mean, in my role, I've been a team leader, I've worked in supply chains, I've worked in different roles. So there are a lot of interface with people. And sometimes you have to convince people to roll out a new process. Or, in supply chain, you have to manage your stakeholders carefully. So these are the sort of type of challenges I'll face in the job.
So on the flip side of that, what's the most rewarding part of your job?
I mean, if you work in aerospace, it's 100% seeing planes fly.
Yes.
It's gotta be. Like I'm an aviation geek. I go plane spotting in the airport.
Right. Okay.
It's a lifelong passion. Doesn't matter whether I work in aerospace or not. And I mean, plane engines are one of the most intricate piece of engineering. Because you built it and it fly for decades. I like to tell people that the combustor of an engine, which is something that I've worked on, operates at a temperature a third of the surface of the sun. When it's running, it's over a few thousand degrees Celsius in the air. And people don't know that when they're like 30,000 feet in the air, having your aircraft meal or your wine, you don't realize that. And I think that is super impressive. As people, we have invented something that I would say crazy, but I mean it's not. It's just magical to allow people to fly and go on holidays and connect people from all around the world. And by the way, rocket engines, most of them are only used once, but engines fly for decades. And if you look at the Boeing 747, that plane has been flying for decades, 30 years, 40 years, and it's still running. So that definitely, like, even looking at the technical side of things, I'm just so impressed. That's definitely the most rewarding part of the job. How can that not give you job satisfaction?
I completely agree. Yes. So what advice would you give a future aerospace manufacturing engineer?
Okay, let's first tackle the stereotype of manufacturing engineering. I'd like to ask, whoever's listening, what are your first impressions of a manufacturing engineer or an aerospace manufacturing engineer? Sometimes a certain image came out in the mind, but actually, I just want to say that manufacturing nowadays is very high tech. We use simulations, we use big data, we use machine learning, and factories nowadays are sort of modern, high tech, advanced facilities. And then it's for everyone. So if people are listening, anyone can be one. If you can work in aerospace, you can be an engineer, you work in manufacturing. It's a place that's open for everyone. And then my advice is, if that's the route you want to go, have an appreciation of manufacturing processes. From traditional ones like forging, machining, to the modern ones like 3D printing, laser, EDM, which stands for electrode discharge machining. and then have a good understanding of data, because then whether you're in manufacturing or not, you'll be dealing a lot with data, especially in the next few decades. And finally, bonus points if you're good at Excel.
Is that right?
Engineers use Excel a lot. I mean, it's good if you know a little bit of that, going to.
So, I know you've recently parted ways with Rolls Royce to work for another company. Do you think that sort of like highlights the need for engineers to continually challenge and improve themselves?
Well, absolutely. I think when I set off in my engineering career, I didn't expect to work at the same place until I retire.
Yeah,
I'm quite adventurous and like to push myself out of my comfort zone and try different things.
yes.
So yes, I'm changing jobs in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes.
Saying yes to things that scares me a little.
Yeah.
And I'll be starting in a consulting firm as a junior manufacturing specialist in a few weeks' time.
Right. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And maybe the lesson here for those who are learning about engineering is that you can find a career path that can bring you to many places.
That's right.
You can work in a lab, to a factory, to a racetrack, to an office in a skyscraper, wherever you want to.
Yeah, yeah.
And it can even offer a global career track for those who, if that's what you're after.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the law of physics pretty much applies anywhere you go on Earth. Of
course. Yeah, yeah.
I can't stress enough like how much opportunities you can get as an engineer, and that's what I keep pushing in STEM outreach.
Yeah. So like you say, you do a lot of outreach work promoting engineering to young people who may not have probably thought about it as a career. So what's your message to those young people that haven't really thought about engineering?
Well, I think many of us are now experiencing a very challenging time, with this COVID-19 situation. And my message to them is, if you want to make a difference, then consider joining engineering.
Yeah.
And because I think engineering is crucial in our recovery from this. In the short term, we've seen engineers build UV-like disinfectant robots so that we can go about our daily lives, have a bit of a normality back. And many more are building facilities to manufacture vaccines, when there's one. And thinking in the longer term, the biggest challenges in the 21st century has to be solved by engineers. So things like sustainability, healthcare, digitization, all these areas are, engineers are key to that.
Yeah.
And we have seen countries and companies pledging for zero net carbon targets, but, cars and houses don't go zero carbon on their own. You need designers and engineers actually developing a solution.
That's right.
So it is a very diverse, dynamic, and very creative career path. So for those who are thinking about engineering or might go into that, have a look at that, because engineering is constantly changing, just like the world.
Yeah.
It's, everything you learn is constantly changing and updating to reflect the world that we are in. So it's very fun. So have a look at it, and I hope you consider
it. Finally, you won the prestigious IET Young Woman Engineer of the Year award in 2019. Now, from winning that award, did that help you promote engineering to a wider audience and more underrepresented groups, and help them bring them into engineering?
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I was in university, I was only one of the only 3 female students in the class of 200.
Right. Yeah.
Our engineering course. I mean, and I'm the only one from itself and my minority background. But fortunately, that didn't stop me from sort of working hard and doing what I do.
Yeah.
And going back to the outreach work, I do it in all sorts of settings with audience from different backgrounds. But I'm always aware that it's especially important for somebody from a minority background to see me on stage presenting, talking, and leading.
Yes.
I whether it's another women or anyone from a different background, let's say.
Yeah.
And I've supported events targeted at students from disadvantaged backgrounds as well. So schools with less resources and students from underrepresented groups. And I genuinely believe the power of STEM in promoting social mobility and equality, because I've seen it myself growing up. STEM can genuinely change people's lives, because, for example, like if you want to become an engineer, the world does need engineer. There's a skill shortage, and most of the time you get a pretty well-paid, stable job. So that's something that I hope we'll be able to reach out to more people and send that message. And yes, it is big, massive honor to win the IET Young Woman Engineer Award, because it's given me this platform to reach more people than I would ever have dreamed of. I mean, recently I was on a video doing STEM outreach, and that video was viewed 10,000 times.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
And on the other day, even the IET, I was on Sky News talking about engineering, and I think the audience viewing figure over 1 million. So
oh yeah,
it's
that's
amazing,
unreal. Yeah,
things
yeah,
that happen. Yeah, because of the award. It's really grateful for it, let's just say.
yeah. Ying, that's it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.